Welcome. The Word of Light channel presents The Parable of the Prodigal Son. In a distant land, there was a father who had two sons who lived under the shelter of love and abundance. The father, a man of wisdom and grace, loved his sons unconditionally. He offered them the protection of his home and the prosperity of his land. But time, that tireless traveler that shapes souls, imposes on each one the desire to venture out. It was natural that the younger son, with the restless spirit of youth, felt the weight of the desire for freedom. His eyes, at times, seemed to be lost beyond the fields, beyond the hills, beyond the horizons that limited his vision. He dreamed of the world, of the promise of life that extended beyond the walls of the house. And so it was, in one of those moments when the wind seems to whisper the deepest desires of the soul, that the younger son approached his father. The look on his face reflected the internal struggle that consumed him. It was not rebellion that moved him, but a search, perhaps unconscious, for something he could not name. "Father," he said, in a low but firm voice, "give me the part of the inheritance that belongs to me. I want to go and follow my path." The father looked at his son with eyes deep with experience, as if he had seen his son's heart grow and now saw the pain that consumed it. It was an unusual request, one that somehow tore at his very core. But he knew that, although he loved his son deeply, he could not stop him from following his journey. True love is like that. It does not imprison, but liberates. So, with a silent sigh, the father granted the request. He divided his possessions, giving his son the share that was his due, and the son, with a beating heart, set off into the unknown. And so began his journey. He went to a distant country where the winds of freedom seemed sweeter. There, he gave himself over to a life without restraints, to endless parties, to pleasure without measure. The gold, the wine, the fleeting friends. Everything seemed eternal. But like a strong wind that blows and suddenly stops, the abundance began to fade. Friends disappeared, banquets became rare, and what was once abundant became scarce. The son then, finding himself alone and without resources, was forced to look for work. He found a job, but the task entrusted to him was humiliating. Caring for pigs, feeding animals that he had previously considered unclean, became his only means of survival. The smell of dirt, the weariness of his soul, and hunger, which he had never known in his home, became his companions. In that moment of despair, the son's eyes were opened to the truth that he had not understood before. He looked at the pigs and thought, "Even my father's servants have food in abundance, while here I die of hunger." A deep sadness enveloped him, and with it came clarity. He knew he could no longer follow that path of pride and self-sufficiency. He longed to return, not as a son worthy of an inheritance, but as a simple servant who would ask for forgiveness. He was ready to abandon his vanity, his illusion of freedom, and humbly seek his father's forgiveness. But shame still followed him, like a shadow that would not be shaken off. So he did the hardest thing. He got up. The journey back would not only be a physical journey, but an emotional one. Each step brought him closer to the home where love, forgiveness, and mercy awaited him. But each step also reminded him of the distance he had created. The time he had spent away from his father weighed heavily on his shoulders. He did not know what awaited him, but he knew he could no longer run away. His father, in his wisdom and immeasurable love, was sitting on the porch of his house, as he had so many times before. But that day, something seemed different. His eyes, which had been constantly fixed on the horizon, finally found his son, who, with hesitant steps, was approaching the house. There was no need for words for the father to recognize the figure that was coming towards him. The father's heart, which had always been waiting for his son's return, opened immediately, and his feet did not hesitate. He ran, with a strength that only true love can sustain, and found his son still some distance away. In his father's arms, the son felt the warmth that had always warmed him, and in his eyes he saw the light of forgiveness. The son, with shame written all over his face, tried to speak. "Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son." But the father, with a smile of infinite compassion, did not let him finish. He did not want words. He did not want explanations. He only wanted his son to return. Instead of listening to the plea for forgiveness, the father said to his servants, "Quickly bring out the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his hand and sandals on his feet. Let's kill the fattened calf, for this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found." And so the son was received, not as one who had failed, but as one who had been saved. And so the son was welcomed, not as one who had failed, but as one who was returning to his true home, to his true identity. The home he had previously left in search of something he did not know what it was, now became his eternal refuge. But the older brother, who had remained with his father, did not understand the joy. He who had been faithful, who had never strayed, felt betrayed by his father's generosity. He did not understand how his father could welcome back the one who had squandered everything. Resentment grew within him, and he refused to enter the party. Then the father went out and spoke to his older son. "Son, you are always with me, and everything that is mine is yours." But it was necessary to celebrate and be glad, because this brother of yours was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. And so the heart of the father, who had already welcomed the lost son, also opened to the brother who had remained. The father's love, immeasurable and incomprehensible, made no distinctions. He was willing to forgive, restore, and unite. Because for a father, it didn't matter how long a son spent away, or how many mistakes he made, but rather that when he returned, he became whole again. This story, as a profound life lesson, teaches us about forgiveness, mercy, and grace. It reminds us that no matter how far we may have gone, there is always a way back home, and that when we return, we will be welcomed with unconditional love. Because in the heart of a father, there is never condemnation, only the desire for his children to return home. And the father, who never stopped waiting, finally saw his son return. And with him, joy returned to the house. Because for a father, every lost child is a treasure to be found, and every mistake made is an opportunity for love to manifest itself in an even stronger and more redeeming way. Amen. These are the wishes of the Word of Light channel. See you soon.